Welcome back to RC CAD to VR. Terrence here, so glad to have you back on board. This is episode 5 in our airplane design series, and this is the episode where we are going to design the nose. Now, I've had a lot of requests for this, so patience is king, and here we are. We're actually going to do this. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I need to say a huge thank you to Tyler Brown of Quebec. Tyler's not alone here. I also have to thank Jason Pace of Georgia, and I also want to thank William Holland of Florida. You've made a very generous contribution on my tip jar on rccad2vr.com. Guys, I hugely appreciate you guys making a contribution. It is an honor, and it is a testament to, the kind of support that's out there in the community for this kind of content. Now, if you guys didn't know, Jason, Tyler, and William are all entered in to win the kit for the L1011, which is the build that I'm currently working on. If that plane flies and has no problems, guys, you guys are set up in the raffle to possibly win it. So anyway, without further ado, let's talk about designing the nose. I need to give you guys a heads up. This episode is going to be a little bit more complex than the previous episodes. And what makes it more complex is that we're going to be working with multiple sketches on multiple axes. And this has its own set of challenges because we're going to need to use the Intersect tool and the Project tool many times in order for this to work. Now, I urge you not to skip through the first pass and just watch it and pause if you need to as you're working through it as you're designing your plane. Because if you skip through, you are almost assured to miss an important detail in making sure that this works for you. All right, so now that I've given you guys that heads up, let's go ahead and get started, and hopefully this process runs as smooth as I get to show it to you guys here. Let's get this going. The first thing we need to do is we need to do a little bit of organizing to get ahead of the model, so that way we don't get parts and pieces and different components and we're going to have to hunt for them later. And the way that we're going to do that, like we did the wing and the fuselage, is we're going to create another component. So in the root component, right click, say new component, and then we're going to go ahead and call this one nose. And you can go ahead and select the activate checkbox if it's not already selected, and that gets us activated in that component. And you can see in our component tree here that the nose is active. Now what we need to do is we need to set up our workspace in order to start the process of designing the nose. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to start with construction planes. I'm going to turn on my canvases. So for this modeling exercise, we only need 2 views. We need the side profile view and we need the top-down footprint view. We don't need the forward elevation for this. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and zoom in here a little bit. And what we need to do is we need to set up our construction planes. So what we're going to use is we're going to use this first former as our first construction plane surface. So let's go ahead and select offset plane and simply press on the outward or the forward facing surface of the former. You can see that creates our offset plane, and then simply press OK. Now that we have a construction plane, now we're going to create a sketch using this former as our basis, and we need that because we need to make sure that the nose is going to completely meet up with the central fuselage. So the way that we're going to do that is we're going to come up to Sketch, Create Sketch, and then we're just going to press on that construction plane. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the Project tool. And the Project tool is basically what it's going to do is it's going to take this shape, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, and it's going to project it onto the surface that we're actually working on, or onto the plane in which we're working. The reason we want to do that is because when you're working in Sketch, you need to make sure that the points line up absolutely perfectly in order to allow the Loft tool to operate the way that we need it to. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the Intersect tool and the Projection tool. We've used these before in previous episodes, but I never really explained how this works. So basically, if you think of a sketch as if you're drawing on a sheet of paper. So here we have sketch 1. And on sketch 1, we have got a node and we've got a spline. Well, when we introduce a second sketch, like sketch 2, these two don't have any understanding or any connection between each other, yet we need these to line up perfectly. And the way we do that is by using the projection tool or the intersect tool to make sure that when we create another node, that node is in the exact same place as it is on the other sketch. And so basically what we do is we take this node right here and then we'll end up projecting it over to here. So all of a sudden we've got a node that is on this sketch independent of this one. Now I realize that sounds a little bit convoluted, but you have to remember that when you create a sketch, it is on its own single sheet of paper or its own plane. So let's go ahead and start making use of the projection tool and moving our points from one sketch and projecting it onto the other sketch. And then later on, we're going to use the intersect tool to use the plane to make sure that our new point that we add as a endpoint is going to be exactly on that plane and matches up with the spline from the other sketch. All right, so I hope that was clear. Let's go ahead and give it a shot. So what we're gonna do is under Create, we're gonna come down to Project and simply select the project option. And then you're going to select this until you see the entire area here turn red. So we're gonna select that and then say OK. And you'll see now that we have got a magenta line outlining where the former was projected. And this is now a sketch that we have put on the plane that we're working on. Now that we have that done, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on our original center plane. If you have not created that yet, I would recommend visiting episode 1, where we designed the formers and centered everything. What we're going to do is we're going to come up to the main component and we're going to open up our construction plane and we're going to turn on the center plane. And that's going to turn that on. And then let's go ahead and finish that sketch. So you can see our center plane is now active. Even though it's not within the nose component, we still can work with it even though the center plane sits in the root component. And what we need to do is we need to project a couple of things onto that in order for us to be able to work out the profile of the nose. So once again, we're going to select Create Sketch and then select the center plane. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to project these points. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Create, come down to Project, and we're going to use the Project tool again. And this time we're going to select this node at the very top. Select that, and then we're going to come all the way to the bottom and we're going to select this node and press OK. What we've effectively done is we've transferred the ability to connect one sketch to another sketch. And if you don't do this correctly, your points will not meet up and your lofting tool is not going to work the way you want it to. And this can be a very frustrating experience. So it's very important that you make sure that these things are perfectly aligned. And that's why we project that over onto the other sketch. So now that we've got that in place, now we can actually get to a point where we can start modeling the nose. Now there are a couple of things to notice. The shape of the profile looks continuous. However, when you're talking about the lofting tool, there are some distinctive breaks in shape. One of the breaks is here at the top end of the window, and the other one is here at the bottom end of the window. Then we also have a midline, where the shape or the direction of the nose changes to go underneath the fuselage. And because of that, we need to create individual sketches for all of those in order to get our loft tool to make the shape that we need. So the first thing that we're going to do with this sketch is we're going to create a sketch that goes from this point that we just projected down to the top of this window. So So I'm going to open up my sketches here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I have named my sketch. So this is the root former, and this is the sketch we're working on. So we're going to go ahead and call this one Fuse Top. Okay, and now let's go ahead and get a perfect side view by clicking on the left box here, so that way we're perfectly head-on look at this. And what we're going to use is we're going to use the fit point spline, and what this tool is going to do is it's going to allow you to create a really nice curvature from here down to this point. So we're going to go into this point until it snaps, and you know it snaps because you see this little box highlight, and then we're going to come down to this top end right here and then press OK. Now I'm not quite sure what these doodads are called in Fusion 360, but I call them rubber bands because they allow you to stretch and bend your spline. So what we're going to do is press escape, so that way our tool is no longer activated, and now we can actually bend these. So you just click on it, and then you can, let's see. So what we're going to do is we need to first get out of the spline tool. So go ahead and press escape, and now we can actually use these rubber bands. So simply click and move them like this, and you can see all of a sudden what happens just by wiggling this around. And so what we're going to do is we're going to match this shape like so. Now you'll notice that I am making the rubber band portion actually align to the edge of the window. And the reason that I'm doing it this way is because when I make my next spline from this point to cover the window, I will make sure that this curvature is as close as possible to being parallel to that window. So I'm going to select that. And then there's one last thing that we need to do. We need to make sure that this spline is absolutely parallel to the ground or the top of the fuselage. As you can see, it is not level. The way that we do that is we select this little band here, and then you can come up to the horizontal vertical tool, press that, and now you can see it is perfectly horizontal. Now we probably need to make a couple more adjustments, so press escape to get out of that tool, and we're gonna pull this down a little bit more, and there we go. Now we've finished our sketch. So that is the fuse top. Now the next one that we're going to do is this window. So let's go ahead and open up our center plane again, and we're going to create a sketch on that plane, and we're going to project again. And the reason we have to do these projections is because we need to make sure that this exact point is in the exact same place on a different sketch. So we're going to create, project, and we're going to project this point onto our current active sketch, and then press OK. And let's go ahead and name this one window. Okay, I learned how to spell window today. Okay, so this time we're not going to use the fit point spline. What we're going to use is the line tool because it is a straight line for the window. We're going to click from here down to about here. And then this little checkbox will accept the entry, and there we go. Now you'll notice here that we have got this little shape right there, and if we come up here we can see that it says tangent, which means that these two lines are tangent to one another. All right, so now we need to do the next part, which is from the bottom of the window to the very end of the nose. So we're going to finish this sketch. We're going to turn on our center plane again. We're going to create another sketch. This time we're going to do the nose, so activate that. And then we're going to use the fit point spline again. And what we need to do, like before, is we need to project this point right here onto our sketch. So create, project, or the shortcut key, which you can see right here, this little letter tells you what the quick shortcut key is to activate this tool, which is P. So we're going to use that from here on out. So I want to project this point because that's what I need to connect. And then press OK. And then I'm going to use the fit point spline. I'm going to draw right down to that point right there, and then press OK. And you can see now we've got our rubber bands again. And the next thing we need to do is we need to get this position. So we're going to press escape to get out of our tool, and we're going to rotate this. Now, one thing to note is before I show you how to do this, if your tool is more than 45 degrees and you press the horizontal vertical, you will notice what it will do. Let's activate that. You'll notice it will actually turn it horizontal parallel to the floor, which is what we don't want. What we actually want is we want this to be higher than 45 degrees, and then when we activate that and then press the horizontal, we'll actually get it perpendicular to the floor. All right, so let's escape out of that and let's start our adjustments. So I'm going to pull this, and also note this constraint here will prevent you from moving it side to side, so you're guaranteed to have this absolutely perfect. So let's see, we're going to put this right about there. And then press finish sketch. And let's see, let's go ahead and rename this. So we're going to name this nose top. Okay, so now we're going to do one more spline, and this one is going to actually be the entire bottom half, but we need to project 2 points this time. So let's go ahead and turn our center plane back on. Sketch, make sure that we select our center plane. And then we're going to use P to project, and I want to project that point and this point. And the reason I'm selecting both of these is because I need to make sure that this connects to here. So when we're done, all of these sit perfectly on the center plane, which we're going to need that as we make our loft. So let's go ahead and create that now. So snap in, you know you've got it because you've got the little square, and come in down here, snap again, and then click the little checkbox. We're going to go ahead and press escape, select this little rubber band. We're going to go ahead and make this horizontal, escape, and now let's select that one. We're going to make sure first of all that we're correct there. Select it, horizontal, vertical, escape out of the tool, and we're going to start positioning this. Just like that. And hit finish sketch, and then we can rename this to fuse bottom. Okay, so now that we've got all of this in place, the next thing we need to do is we need to create some more construction planes. There's a problem though. You cannot create a construction plane based on these points. So how do we get our construction planes on these lines so that it meets up? Well, like pretty much everything else, there's usually a hack for it. So make sure that you have exited out of the sketch. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a hack. So we're going to use the box tool. So select box, and then select this little point here. And now we can create a box. And that box is perfectly aligned to this point. And what we're going to do then is we're going to use that box to create our construction plane right there. And say OK. And then use this little select priority to turn on the component or the body priority. select that and go ahead and delete it because we don't need it, and then deselect that so that way we can select everything. And that's how we get this offset plane or construction plane directly on that line. Now that we've got that in place, now we can create our sketch. So what we're going to do is we're going to say sketch. We're going to click right there. And the next thing we need to do is we again need to do a projection. So we're going to use the P key and we're going to project this top node right there. So I projected that. Now we're going to say OK, but there's another tool that we need to do in order to get a point to line up perfectly on this sketch. How do we do that? We're going to use a tool called the Intersect tool, which is part of the projections. And you can see here, Intersect. And what we're going to do is we're just going to highlight this sketch right here. And you'll notice there's this red dot. That red dot is where the plane is actually intersecting with this sketch line right here. So select it and then press OK. And now you can see we've got this purple lavender circle there, which is a point that we can now connect to in our sketch. So let's go ahead and rotate around so that we can see the top view. And you can see now we've got our 2 points which are active here and here. So what we're going to do again is we're going to use the fit point spline, and we're going to select this point, and we're going to come over here and make sure that you are selecting the right point right there, and then press OK. And like before, we're now going to align these. So we're going to select that, make that horizontal, press escape to get out of the tool, select this one. This one actually needs to be turned a little bit more, and then go ahead and horizontal vertical. And now we can do our adjustments, and I'm going to align this to fit over the window. And that looks pretty good to me. And once that's done, you can go ahead and finish that sketch. And so now you can see we've got our first part of the fuselage, and it's starting to look a little more three-dimensional. All right, so let's go ahead and rename this. So we're going to call this one side fuse window top. And now we're going to repeat this whole process again, this time for the lower window and then for the nose. So, like before, we need to do our little hack. We're going to select the box tool, come in here, select in here, then press, and let's go ahead and do that. Add our construction plane on top of that, press OK, select our body priority, and go ahead and delete that. Now that we've got that in place, now we can go ahead and create our next sketch. So create sketch, this time on this construction plane. And like before, what we need to do is we need to project this point right here onto our plane. So let's go ahead and do project right there, say OK, and then we need to use the intersect tool. There, intersect. We're going to select this. You can see there's our little red dot, and select and press OK. And there you can see we've again got our magenta or lavender dot there. So like before, we're going to use the fit point spline. We're going to snap into this one, select the little checkbox, and then we need to fit these correctly. So like that, press escape to get out of the tool, and then select this one. We're going to turn this just to make sure this is a little bit easier, and there we go. And now we're going to get back to our top view so we can align this. This time we're going to align it to the bottom of the window. so. Okay. And we're going to finish sketch, and let's go ahead and name this one. So this is going to be the side fuse window bottom. Very good. And now we've got to do one more, which is this center. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create our little box. So finish sketch first, then our little box right in here. There we go. Say okay. Construction plane. Okay. Then we can go ahead and delete that box because we don't need it. And then a new sketch right on there. And like before, we're going to project this dot. Say okay. And then we're going to intersect on here. There's our little red line, there's our little red dot. And now we're going to use our spline again to go from here to here. Press OK. Escape out of the tool. We want to align that one. And let's see, escape so we can adjust this one. And we're going to go ahead and align that. Escape out of the tool. Let's go ahead and get to the top view. And let's get this lined up. And there you have it. That is now the horizontal sketches that we need to create our lofts. So let's go ahead and rename this. And this one is nose fuse. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and finish that sketch. And now you can see roughly what this is going to look like. Now there's one other part that we need to do, and that is the window right here is actually got a change in shape in it. And because of that, we're going to get a very strange looking loft when we're done with this. And that's not something that we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create another plane. And so let's go ahead and go into our construction planes and let's activate this one. And we're going to select it and say M for move, create a copy, and let's go ahead and pull this one over. Let's go ahead and get a side view here. And I'm going to place that right about here. And this is going to guarantee that when we do our loft, that this top end isn't going to be deformed in comparison to what's underneath. It'll create a better transition. So I'm going to press OK, so that way we've got that construction plane there. And now we're going to, again, create another sketch, this time on this plane. And this time we're only going to use the intersect tool. So project intersect, and we want to make sure that we intersect all of these lines right here. And there we go. Now it looks a little strange at this angle, but if we go to the side, you can see that they are all perfectly lined up. And we need that because, again, we need to project those positions from those other sketches onto the sketch that we're working on. So I'm going to press OK. And then I'm going to come to the fit point spline. And I'm going to snap these in. Like so. And press OK. Now we've got a lot of rubber bands, and you can see what's happened. We've got a little bit of an odd shape here. but we need to also make these rubber bands horizontal. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're gonna press that, horizontal, escape, and come down here, select this one, make that one horizontal, and escape. So you can see how this shape is actually changing. And it's no longer cylindrical like the center part of the fuselage because of the window. And this is going to compensate for that. So let's go ahead and turn off this construction plane. And if you're happy with this particular shape, you can leave it as such, or you can make your adjustments with the rubber bands. But I'm happy with the way that it automatically did this. And so I'm going to go ahead and finish the sketch, and I'm going to call this window rear. And there we go. Okay, so we're done with our canvases, so we can turn that off now. And here you have the beginnings of what we need. All right, so hopefully that wasn't too painful and you guys were able to get all of these sketches in place and you can orbit around and start seeing what this is probably going to look like for you. If you haven't already done so, please give this video a thumbs up if you're liking it. And if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button because I've got a lot more videos to come and the full documented series of how I build the L1011, including the maiden flight when that time comes. So moving on, let's go ahead and get our surfaces in place for where our formers are going to go. Now, this is just an interim step before we move on to the next one. We've done this before. If you remember back when we did the ribs, we used surfaces to where the ribs were going to go. We're going to use that same exact process this time for the formers. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. So let's go ahead and turn on this construction plane and do a sketch. And we're going to just do a simple box. And if you have not watched any of the other videos, this is one of the methods that I like to use in order to get to the point of being able to actually create these formers and ribs and spars. If you haven't watched those, go back and check them out because there are lots of neat little tips and tricks in there. So now that we've got our box, let's go ahead and hit finish. And let's go over to the surface tool and select patch. Let's go ahead and patch that, and that gets us a surface. And press OK. And we can go ahead and delete that sketch because we don't need it. And let's go ahead and select this and get it moved. And I did that by pressing the M key. So I'm going to move this out just a little bit. Press OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a pattern. And if you've not used the pattern tool before, it's a really cool tool. All you do is you select your surface and you're say create pattern, and I want to create a rectangular pattern. And then over here in the directions, what you want to do is select, and we want to use the Y axis as our direction. You can see now we've got our little arrow. We're going to pull this out to right about, let's see here, maybe about here. Let me take a look at this real quick. So I want to align this right there with that nose just as an alignment point. And there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and add one more. So let's do 4. And then once that's done, simply come up to the rectangle pattern palette and press OK. And now we've got our formers in place. So let's go ahead and check these out. And you can see now we've got these in here. Now, for organizational reasons, let's go ahead and move these into their own component. So let's right click on the nose component, select new component. Let's call these one formers and bulkheads. And I'm not going to activate them at this point, so I'm going to uncheck that and say OK. And then I'm going to click, hold Shift, select the last one to select them all, or you can drag across like so to get them all selected. Either way works. And then click and drag this into there. click, hold, and drag this into there. There we go. And now our formers are in here. And we can go ahead and turn those off. And now we've got our formers right in here. All right, so now we're gonna move on to the lofting phase. Now there are a couple of things to keep in mind. If you have problems with this loft, there's a chance that something is not lined up correctly. Make sure that this entire time you are not working in 3D sketch mode, because that is going to create all kinds of problems for you based on the way that we did this. Also, in some cases, you might need to have chaining turned on, and in other cases, you need to have chaining turned off. And you can play around with this, and it really depends on how you went about doing this. Now, if your rails do not work correctly, make sure that the rail that you're using isn't like a full enclosed or a full circle or a closed circuit of a spline, because then the rail won't know exactly how to inform the loft how to actually create that shape. So let's go ahead and start lofting. All right, now we can work on actually creating the loft and using these sketches actually to create the shape. So over in the Surface tab, we're going to select Loft. Now, if it's not available here in the menu, you can also go to Create, and you'll find it in the drop-down menu as well. So I'm gonna select Loft, and then I'm gonna press here and here for the first part. Then I'm going to select the rails, which is that and that. And what this has done now is it has made sure that this transition from the top of the window to the top of the fuselage into this corner is shaped correctly and will meet up properly with the other lofts. So let's go ahead and press OK. Then we're going to repeat that now for, let's see here, let's turn that off. Select there and there. And then these are going to be our rails right there, and say OK. Now you'll notice I turned the chaining off for this one, and the reason is there is no chaining that needs to take place. If you run into a problem where it's not creating the loft, try various options with the chain selection if it gives you problems. Now, if you run into any other issues, the issue could be that your points or something does not align correctly. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's go ahead and select here and here. And let's go ahead and add our rails there. And then press OK, and then we're going to do one more for the bottom half. So let's create a loft. Now, because of the way this is, I'm going to turn chaining on, and then I'm going to select this one, and then I'm going to turn chaining off for my rails. So I'm going to select the rails, add that one, and add that one, and then press OK. Yes! All right, we did it. It actually worked, and I'm hoping that it worked for you guys as well. It did for me. I got lucky this time. Sometimes it's a little bit finicky, but it looks like all of it worked out. And yeah, hoping that you guys had the similar experience. Now, let's go ahead and move on to cutting out our formers, and then I've got a bonus at the end, so stick around for that as well. Let's go ahead and get these cut out. So let's go ahead and close these out. Let's see here, I'm going to close that out, kind of make things a little bit neat, and then I'm going to turn my formers and bulkheads on. Now, we need to trim the excess here, and if you remember from the wing design, we did this very process to make sure that these line up perfectly. And the way that we do that is we're going to turn on our center plane, and we're going to come to modify, and we're going to split face. And I'm going to select this one, and I'm going to hold shift and select the 4 that I've created. And then my splitting tool is going to be my center plane. And then press OK. And we can turn off the center plane, and now you can see we've got these extras. So I'm going to select these, hold shift, And I'm going to go ahead and delete those, so that way now we're perfectly down the center. And now we can use our lofted area in order to cut these out. But before we do that, we need to stitch them. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the stitch tool, and we're going to stitch this, with this, with this, and with that. And you'll see where the stitch lines are because of the green areas here. And then we're going to press OK. And you'll notice over here in the nose component, it has moved them all into one surface, which is what we need to do our cutting. So we're going to, again, select all of these by holding Shift. And then we're going to modify, and we're going to split face. Now those four are already selected, so we're just going to hit Split Tool. And then we're going to select those and say OK. And now we've got these right there that we can delete. And now we can turn this off, and now we can see we have got our formers, or the beginnings of our formers. So what I'm going to do is I want to transfer a couple of the elements from the actual formers from the center of the fuselage onto my first former here. And the way we do that is going to be with projection. So what we need to do is we need to create a new sketch. So I'm going to click here, and I want this surface right here to be the surface that I want to sketch on. So there we go. And now we're going to project by pressing P. And I want to project this top line, and let's see, this bottom line here. And I also want to project this. So I can project any of these onto that surface. If you see, I'm moving between the different projections, and there's the nose, there's the rear window, there's the middle point, and then I can also project the entire former if I wanted to. But I'm just going to project this because I'm going to need this, because I'm going to use the offset tool to zoom in or create the actual shape. So I'm going to select that. And once I'm done with that, all I have to do is say OK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the offset tool, and over here turn off chain selection. What chaining is going to do is it allows you to chain the entire perimeter of a sketch. All I want is this outer part. So I'm going to select, and then I'm going to hold Shift and add to it like so. And now I can use this and come in here like that. And I'm going to do 20 millimeters. Like so. There we go. Now you can see we're getting the beginnings of our shape. However, we have got a little break in here, so we're going to go ahead and fix that by using the line tool and going right between them, escaping out of that. Now you can see we can select that area. So now to select them all, what we're going to do is we're going to hold Shift and select the area there, and select this one, and then we're going to press E for extrude, and my formers are 3 millimeters thick, and press OK. Now, one of the things that I didn't do was I didn't actually activate my formers and bulkheads. So what happened is the body is actually up here in the nose component, the root nose component. So we're going to change that. I'm going to take this and drag this down into formers and bulkheads. And so now that body is actually there. And then I'm going to go ahead and activate this just to make sure that everything we do continues on within this. Now we can turn off this because we don't need it, and now you can see we've got our next bulkhead. So we're going to go ahead and repeat this process, and let's see here. I'm going to create a new sketch from here, and I want to project that line and the bottom line, and this time you can see it's cleaner because we don't have this little piece here that we didn't include. And then I want to use the outside like so, press OK, And the next thing is we're going to use the offset tool to offset the outer portion, like so. I'll pull this in 20 millimeters, press OK. Now, I just noticed this doesn't actually extend all the way across, and we're going to need that. So again, line tool, pull across, say OK. And then we're going to escape out of that tool, select these areas by holding Shift. And we still have a problem here, so let's take a look and see if we can find out what's going on. And what do you know, we have got a line that doesn't align or cross. So we're going to go ahead and close that out. Let's try it again. There we go. And Shift and select these areas, and then E for extrude. And I'm going for 3 millimeters and press OK. Now we can verify that it actually went now into our formers and bulkheads component, because there it is right here. So then I'm going to turn that one. Let's see, where are you? There we are. Turn that off. And now we're going to do this last one. So we're going to go to create a sketch, select that, and now I'm going to project that line and that line. I'm going to project the outer portion, say OK. And then I'm going to use the offset tool. Look at that. And let's go 15 millimeters. Press OK. Let's check. Yep, everything is good to go. So we're going to select these all. There's nothing to clean up. E for extrude, 3 millimeters, and press OK. And then let's go ahead and extrude this piece out, 3 millimeters. OK. And let's turn off all of our sketches. And there you have it, your nose and the formers that you need for your nose. So now I'm going to go ahead and reactivate the main area here. Let's turn off these canvases. And now you can see how this is starting to all come together. All right, so now that we've got the formers in place and we've got our skin for our nose section for our plane, let me show you guys a little bit of a bonus so you can start seeing what your plane is actually going to look like. Let's dig in. So let's go ahead and go down to our nose and turn on that. And let's create a loft really quick from these areas. So I'm going to select that, that, that. And now this one is going to be a little bit different because this one actually has the let's see here. There we go. We'll do that again right here. Let's get underneath. There we go. One more time. Let's pull up the fuselage. Select there. And let's go ahead and get these wrapped up. And there we go. So now what we can see is how our airplane is actually now starting to shape up. And if I come into my wing, let's see, let's go into wing, and I'm going to turn on that surface. Let's see if I can find it really quick. There we are. There's the wing skin. And now you can see how this is starting to come along. And there you have it. You've got a nose, and you now know how to loft this through to start seeing what your airplane model is actually going to look like. Now, if I wanted to mirror this, I could quickly do so. So now I'm going to create a mirror. So create mirror of this. And the mirror plane is going to be the center. Say OK. And let's do one more. Create a mirror of this on this center plane. Here we go. And now I could actually also create a mirror of the wing. And we're going to use, there we go. That is how all of this is going to start coming together for you as you design your airplane. All right, so that's pretty cool, and I hope you guys are feeling great after that tutorial and it wasn't too frustrating for you guys. Now you can see roughly what this plane is going to look like. We've only got the tail section to work on, but it's looking like we've got a very nice looking plane here. So again, huge thank you to Jason Brown of Quebec, Jason Pace of Georgia, and William Holland of Florida for making contributions to my tip jar on RC CAD to VR. It is a huge honor for you guys to support the channel. Thank you so much, and until the next episode, take care.